Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember that Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO, John Michael, is reading a textbook cover to cover. I did not write a review. I neglected to write a review yesterday, which is the first time since I started writing reviews that I neglected to write a review. So I'm just going to carry on and read the section that comes up now. In Chapter 15, which is about the first global age in Europe and Asia from 1415 to 1796, the first section having been the search for spices, where we find the New World in search of Indian spices and a new trade route other than through the Mediterranean, going around the Cape of Good Hope or going around the globe. Well, those were the plans. And the Section 2, diverse traditions of Southeast Asia and the regions within it and cultures of Southeast Asia. Now, here we are in Section 3 of Chapter 15, which is called European Footholds in Southeast Asia and India. That makes sense. Setting the scene, in 1511, a Portuguese fleet commanded by Afonso de Albuquerque dropped anchor off Malacca, a rich Muslim trading port that controlled the sea routes linking India, Southeast Asia, and China. "Have you come in peace or in war?" asked the Sultan. "Peace," replied Albuquerque. The true goal of the Portuguese, however, was not peace, but conquest. The fleet remained at anchor for several weeks. Then they opened fire. The Portuguese quickly took the city, killing its inhabitants and seizing its wealth. On the ruins of the mosque, Albuquerque built a fort. The Sultan had fled, thinking the invaders would loot and leave. But when he heard about the fort, he realized that the Portuguese had come to stay. Portugal was the first European power to gain a foothold in Asia. The Portuguese ships were small in size and number, but the firepower of their shipboard cannons was unmatched. In time, this superior firepower helped them win control of the rich Indian Ocean spice trade and build a Portuguese trading empire in Asia. Before long, however, other European nations would challenge Portugal. Heading: Portugal's Empire in the East. After Vasco da Gama's voyage, the Portuguese, under Albuquerque's command, burst onto the Indian Ocean. In 1510, they seized the island of Goa off the coast of India, making it their major military commercial base. Albuquerque then moved to end Muslim power and turn the Indian Ocean to Portuguese Lake. Trading outposts. Albuquerque burned coastal towns and crushed Arab fleets at sea. The Portuguese attacked Aden at the entrance of the Red Sea and took Ormuz, gateway to the Persian Gulf. In 1511, Albuquerque took Malacca, massacring the city's Muslims and making the Europeans hated and feared. In less than 50 years, the Portuguese had built a trading empire with military and merchant outposts, or distant areas under their control, rimming the southern seas. They seized cities on the east coast of Africa so they could resupply and repair their ships. For most of the 1500s, Portugal controlled the spice trade between Europe and Asia. Impact. Despite their sea power, the Portuguese remained on the fringe of Asian trade. They had neither strength nor the resources to conquer much territory on land. In India and China, where they faced far stronger empires, they merely sought permission to trade. The intolerance of Portuguese missionaries caused resentment. In Goa, they attacked Muslims, destroyed Hindu temples, and introduced the Inquisition. Portuguese ships even sank Muslim pilgrim ships on their way to Mecca. Some Asian merchants chose to trade with the Portuguese. Others, however, chose to bypass the Portuguese-controlled towns and continue their older trade patterns. New heading. Rise of the Dutch. The Dutch were the first Europeans to challenge Portuguese domination in Asia. The land we know today as the Netherlands included a group of provinces and prosperous cities on the North Sea. The region had long been a center of handicrafts and trade. Through royal marriages, it fell under Spanish rule in the early 1500s. Later, the Protestant northern provinces won independence. Dutch sea power. In 1599, a Dutch fleet returned to Amsterdam from Asia after more than a year's absence. Its cargo carried pepper, cloves, and other spices. Church bells rang to celebrate this happy return. Those who had invested in the venture received 100% profit. The success of this voyage led to a frenzy of overseas activity. By the late 1500s, Dutch warships and trading vessels put the Netherlands in the forefront of European commerce. They used their sea power to set up colonies of trading posts around the world. At the southwestern tip of Africa, the Dutch built the Cape Town settlement, where they could repair and resupply their ships. I did not know that. Dutch. The Dutch did New York City, right? Right? New Amsterdam? Right? Dutch dominance. In 1602, a group of wealthy Dutch merchants formed a Dutch East India Company. In the next decades, the Dutch strove to make themselves a major European power in the East. In 1641, they captured Malacca from the Portuguese and opened trade with China. Before long, they were able to enforce a monopoly on the Spice Islands, controlling shipments to Europe as well as much of the trade within Southeast Asia. Like the Portuguese, the Dutch used military force to further their trading goals. At the same time, they forged closer with local rulers than the Portuguese had. Many Dutch merchants married Asian women. Trade brought the Dutch enormous wealth. At home, Dutch merchants built tall mansions along the canals of Amsterdam and hired artists like Rembrandt to paint their portraits. In the 1700s, however, the growing power of England and France contributed to the decline of the Dutch trading empire in the East. New heading. Spain, seizes the Philippines. Didn't know that, did you? While the Portuguese and Dutch set up bases on the fringes of Asia, Spain took over the Philippines. Magellan had claimed the archipelago for Spain in 1512. Within about 50 years, Spain had conquered and colonized the islands, renaming them for the Spanish king Philip II. Unlike most other peoples of Southeast Asia, the Filipinos were not united. As a result, they could be conquered more easily. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. In the spirit of the Catholic Reformation, Spanish priests set out to convert the Filipino people to Christianity. Later missionaries from the Philippines tried to spread Catholic teachings in China and Japan. The Philippines became a key link in Spain's overseas trading empire. The Spanish shipped silver mined in Mexico and Peru across the Pacific to the Philippines. From there, they used the silver to buy goods in China. In this way, large quantities of American silver flowed into the economies of East Asian nations. Mughal India and European traders. This is a new heading as well. Mughal India and European traders. Before the 1700s, European traders made very little impression on India, which was enjoying one of its greatest periods of strength and prosperity. In 1526, Babur had founded the Mughal dynasty. European merchants were dazzled by India's splendid court and its many luxury goods. There seemed little of value that Europeans could offer to the sophisticated civilization of Mughal India. Industry and commerce. Besides producing spices, India was the world leader in textile manufacturing. It exported large quantities of silk and cotton, from sheer muslins to elaborate chinsas. Handicrafts and shipbuilding added to the country's wealth. The Mughal Empire was larger, richer, and more powerful than any kingdom in Europe. When Europeans sought trading rights, Mughal emperors saw no threat in granting such concessions. The Portuguese, and later the Dutch, English, and French thus were permitted to build forts and warehouses in coastal towns. Turmoil and decline. When Akbar's successors ended his policy of religious toleration, conflicts rekindled between Hindu and Muslim princes. Years of civil war drained Mughal's resources. Rulers then increased taxes, sparked peasant rebellions. Several weak rulers had a throne in early 1700s. Corruption became widespread, and central government eventually collapsed. And finally, for the section for today, and thank you for joining me, and again, if you've made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing, and even leaving a coin emoji in the comment section so as to boost the algorithm without saying anything. You could also say something, and that would be great as well. But if you have nothing to say and you'd like to support, leave a coin emoji in the comments if you would like. Thank you. British-French rivalry. As Mughal power faltered, French and English traders played off rival Indian princes against one another. Both the English and French East Indian companies made alliances with local officials and independent rajas. Each company organized its own army of sepoys, or Indian troops. The English and the French had armies of Indian troops. By the mid-1700s, the British and French had become locked in bitter struggle for global power. In 1756, war between Britain and France erupted in Europe. The fighting soon spread, involving both nations, lands in Asia, and the Americas. In India, Robert Clive, an agent of the British East India Company, used an army of British troops and sepoys to drive the French from the trading posts. The company then forced the Mughal emperor to recognize its rights to collect taxes in Bengal in the northeast. By the late 1700s, the company had become the real ruler of Bengal, able to use its great wealth to spread its influence into other parts of India. By the late 1700s, the company had become a real ruler of Bengal, able to use its great wealth to spread its influence into other parts of India. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. My name is John Michael. Context is Everything Media Network. Yeah. Thank you for watching.